Okay, we had a ton of people in the live stream last night tell us that they enjoyed us going through and streaming a 2022 fantasy football draft. So we're going to do the same thing here. We just got done watching what I thought was going to be one of the worst football games of the season turn into at least something slightly intriguing between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. Let's get this draft underway. You know, I will send this link out in the live chat right now. And yeah, a lot of people spamming Najee Harris. Najee Harris looks so damn good. I mean, Najee Harris, we had him ranked as the dynasty running back one before the full-on Jonathan Taylor breakout, but I still think that he is right up there in consideration. We actually did a dynasty draft on the Dynasty channel for anybody who wanted to check that out yesterday. Well, let me set up this draft. Now, this is going to be a $10 draft for anybody wanting to get in, and I will be answering questions as we go through to this draft. But as I've said, we have live streamed every single night answering questions pretty much all year now, so let me have some fun. There's nothing more fun than hopping into a 2022 fantasy football draft. This is going to be a real money fantasy football draft. This is going to cost $10. And because it's going to cost $10, you know people are going to take it seriously, which is what you kind of want here. I don't want to be hopping into a draft that nobody's going to take it seriously with. And also, just keep in mind, this is a best ball draft. You're not going to have to submit your starting lineup next year. That will automatically be done for you. And also, there is no access to the waiver wire. So strategy in this draft will change just slightly. Let's go through and let's send this out right now. Okay, we'll get to all those questions in 1 second, of course. Thank you all so much for everybody coming out to the live stream right away. I genuinely appreciate it. We just got to get this draft set up before we can answer those questions. I don't want to be waiting too long of this. Okay, so we sent out a link on Patreon. We sent out a link on Discord. We sent that link out in the live chat as well. So hopefully this fills relatively fast. It's going to be a private draft just with the subscribers of the channel. Jayan coming out says, what a game. Holy cow, yeah. The thing that was interesting about that game is I thought it was legitimately going to be the worst game of the season. I thought it would be the worst game of the season. I mean, by the time you were just watching halfway through the third quarter, you're like, what am I watching? Can I watch literally anything else? Can I go put on HBO and watch Succession here? Can I read a book? Like, it looked horrible, but of course, it did turn around a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I walked the dog in the third quarter, and then by the time I got back, I was like, okay, this may actually be a game. Okay, it looks like we got 5 spots left in this draft. We also have our next question coming out from Jess Sherman. Says, almost had that second Pat Freiermuth tight end in both leagues. What we can do real quick is let me go through and let me look at the game. Actually, we're not going to have time for that. We're not going to have time for that. Let's just instead get ready for this league because it just filled. Actually, we got 1 spot left. And of course, if you have not done so already and you want to participate in these drafts with us going forward, all you have to do is go sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FLOCK, not only can you get drafts with us on the live stream, but you can also go through if you want to draft, I mean, in your lunch break, just a random 2 p.m. time of day, and you want to go, okay, I have $5. Let's go get in a $5 fantasy draft with a $60 league pot. You can go sign up for Underdog Fantasy, and you can go up against some random people in the public lobby. And as I discussed, you can do hundreds of these drafts because you don't submit a starting lineup and because you don't have the waiver wire. You have 20 rounds, so you're going to be drafting players that have hideous names near the end of this. But of course, when you use promo code FLOCK, which you can find the link to in the description of the video, as well as the comment section, they'll actually match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And if you tried signing up for Underdog Fantasy and they were not available for player props in your state, they should be available for drafts. There are still some states that don't allow Underdog Fantasy with drafts because it is considered a DFS contest. I believe those states are Nevada, Washington State. There are a couple other ones, but I mean, even if your state didn't allow player props, there's a good chance that they allow drafts. And we're going to be talking about some strategy. I don't want to be giving the strategy away at the top of the draft because obviously, I mean, everybody in this draft is in the live stream right now. So it would be a little bit, stupid of me to go through and talk about exactly what we're doing. And Mark coming out with our next question says, Kyler Murray or Tom Brady in a 4-point passing touchdown format. I know a lot of people are worried about Tom Brady with the tough matchup he has against the Buffalo Bills. I'm not at all. I mean, if you look at the implied team total for this game right now, Las Vegas has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the second highest scoring offense of this week. So I'm not going to be be worried about Brady at all. Now, what I will say is in a 4-point passing touchdown format, I'm going to prefer the quarterback that has a little more rushing upside, knowing it's going to be harder for that pocket passing option to catch up just based off of passing volume and efficiency. So I'm going to be going with Kyler Murray over Tom Brady in a 4-point passing touchdown league. If it's a 6-point passing touchdown league there, I think we can have a conversation. And then Mark coming out says, should I worry about Cooper Kupp's injury? Let me go through and pull up the most recent report that we have on that Cooper Kupp injury. Personally, I have not been, worried about it whatsoever. I think that with Cooper Kupp, what's frustrating is he plays on Monday night, of course. So maybe it's a spot that we're not necessarily going to have full clarity with. But with Kupp, you would imagine that if it was a serious injury, he would not have practiced at all, especially because it's a Monday night game. So for him to go through and practice on Thursday, no, I don't necessarily think you should be worried about the Cooper Kupp injury. And of course, we're going to continue to answer these questions here in this live stream. But as we get close to being on the clock here, I am going to have to go through and pull up this draft board. Interesting to see that you have Austin Eckler falling to the 106. Okay, so wrong button. I apologize. We're going to try to get better not making mistakes with the draft stream. We used to do this every single night. Y'all know we did this draft stream every single night for over a month, but a little rusty here, as y'all probably saw with the live stream yesterday. We're just switching back and forth. Okay, so you got Austin Eckler, you have Dalvin Cook going at the 106 and the 107. Okay. So Justin Jefferson does go as the wide receiver 1 off the board in this draft. He goes ahead of Cooper Kupp. He goes ahead of Devontae Adams. I've had Justin Jefferson as my dynasty wide receiver 1 for a very long time now. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this and rolling their eyes. I know a lot of people are probably going to hate to see this selection here. You know what? I don't care, because I will show y'all once we get into round 6, 7, the reason for this. We are going to go through and we are going to be taking Joe Mixon here at the 110. Now, y'all know Mixon was a player that we were drafting nonstop in the second round coming into this season. I think that we can go through based on what we've seen this year from the Cincinnati Bengals offense, as well as from Joe Mixon himself. I think we can move him up even higher than where we had him coming into the season. And JN coming out says, I legit almost messaged you saying start the stream now during the halftime. I'll have my ass off. Can't wait for the Najee Harris haters to come out. Yeah. No, I promise you, my man, I legitimately thought about that. I thought about okay, this game is literally just horrible. Nobody should be watching this at all. Can we just start the live stream a little bit early and maybe get an extra draft in? Good thing we didn't, though. Good thing we didn't, because obviously that would have been a debacle. Maybe we could have watched the stream. Watched the game together. Okay, so now our next pick here. Yeah, let's go through and let's make another pick before we're going to get to our next question. Got Deebo Samuel going at the 201 by Raw here. That does not change my plan at all. I'll say I really hate this Deebo Samuel selection. Just as a quick side note, to take Deebo Samuel over Tyreek Hill, I think that's very, very bad. Yeah, we're going to start this draft off with Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. Very similar to what we did in the draft yesterday. If y'all watched our draft yesterday, I don't want to brag. Y'all know I'm always the first person to criticize our drafts and talk about how stupid I am. But our draft yesterday, we absolutely killed. And this is a very similar start. We ended up getting Christian McCaffrey at the 109 in that draft yesterday, or the 107, something along those lines. We got Christian McCaffrey in the first, and then we got Javonte Williams in the second. And now our next question going to be coming out from A12345. Always happy to have you out, my friend. It says, team is Kyler, Tannehill, Gardner Minshew, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, Elijah Mitchell, Miles Sanders, Jermichael Hasty, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Darnell Mooney. The Chargers, Philadelphia Eagles defense need to drop 2 for a kicker, and moving Julio from the IR. Who should I be dropping? Okay. I would go through, and if this is a 1 quarterback format, I think that you can just go ahead and drop Ryan Tannehill, because now that you have Kyler Murray back and Kyler Murray is clearly fully healthy here, I see no reason to have that backup quarterback, especially when you're not going to be playing Tannehill over Kyler regardless of the matchup. So that's going to be my first drop. And my second drop is going to come down between a defense and Jermichael Hasty. Now, the reason I'm telling you to possibly drop Jermichael Hasty instead of that defense, while y'all know throughout the entire season, I'm always the guy saying, you only want one defense, one defense, one defense, one defense. Please don't roster 2. Now that we're closing in on the fantasy football playoffs, it's a little bit of a different story here. We actually can get away with having 2 defenses. I will say that. I would go through and drop JaMychal Hasty. Now, I know Elijah Mitchell could easily miss this week. I mean, he could miss this week okay, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 says it's a 2-quarterback league. Okay, if it's a 2-quarterback format, let's revise that question. I think we have to just drop JaMychal Hasty as well as one of those other defenses, assuming that we're dropping Philly's defense because they are on the bye this week. And the reason that we're going to be dropping JaMychal Hasty is while, yes, I mean, you may have Elijah Mitchell missing this week, regardless of if it's from the concussion or the knee injury. We really don't know right now. But what we can say with JaMychal Hasty is even if Elijah Mitchell does miss, we don't necessarily know if that's going to make JaMychal Hasty someone you have to get into your starting lineup based on the idea that, I mean, he can split this backfield. It's not going to be an Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard type situation where the starter goes down in front of them. All of a sudden, they're getting every single snap there. Whereas with JaMychal Hasty, maybe he splits this backfield with Jeff Wilson. Maybe they get Trey Sermon some level of involvement as a running back out of the backfield here. So honestly, I think I would just go through and drop Hasty and the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now, Suraj Patel coming out says bench Kyle Pitts for Pat Freiermuth and Chase Claypool for KJ Osborne. They, along with Najee Harris, gave me a life for a possible playoff run. Okay, my friend, I'll say, if you would have asked me if you should have gone through and played Kyle Pitts or Pat Freiermuth, I would have definitely said, you know what? We want to be going through and playing Kyle Pitts over Pat Freiermuth easily. For Pat Freiermuth to come out here, get the receiving touchdown, and get you 11 fantasy points, obviously, you can be somewhat excited about that. And then with Chase Claypool coming out, getting you 17 fantasy points with KJ Osborne, it would have been about the same. He would have got you 18. I will say, honestly, my friend, I'm not a massive fan of that call. I think I would have gone with Najee Harris over Pat Freiermuth just based on the volume that he has. And then Batmac Gaming coming out says, what's good, Mason? Pick one from Robbie Anderson, JaMychal Hasty, or Allen if he plays. Oh, definitely Keenan Allen if he plays. That's uncertain for now. Now, that game's going to be in Los Angeles, so it should be a 4 p.m. game. Only playing them if McKissick's out and Treadwell or Marvin Jones. Okay, so between Robbie Anderson and JaMychal Hasty, I would go with Robbie Anderson if you have Elijah Mitchell as a player good to go this week. But if Elijah Mitchell is out, I would go through and instead I would play Robbie Anderson. And now, we would play JaMychal Hasty. Of course, you understand what I'm talking about there. And regarding Laquan Treadwell or Marvin Jones, obviously Laquan Treadwell has looked much better over the past few weeks than he's done throughout his entire NFL career, bouncing around from team to team after being drafted by the Minnesota Vikings back in that 2016 NFL draft class. But it is what it is. Let's take Marvin Jones. Got Keenan Allen going at the 307. Okay, so let's look at what's going to be available to us with this next pick. Okay, so we're 3 picks away here. Come on, fantasy gods. Akers goes. Honestly, y'all know I had Cam Akers as my dynasty running back 4 coming into last season, but with the torn Achilles, that injury is so significant, I wasn't going to be considering Cam Akers here. Leonard Fournette goes. This is shaping up perfectly for us, if I may say so. We're going to go and we're going to take J.K. Dobbins here at the 310. Oh, whew. I was not thinking we were going to get Dobbins. With J.K. Dobbins, coming into the season, I was ranking Cam Akers ahead of him. I was ranking Cam Akers, way ahead of him. I had J.K. Dobbins as a low-end dynasty running back 1, where we had Cam Akers as that top 5 dynasty running back. But the 2 injuries could not be more different. We have seen a long list of running backs return from the injury that J.K. Dobbins suffered. And on the other end of the spectrum, the injury that Cam Akers suffered. The only running back that's been able to really come back from that is Donta Foreman. And he is nowhere close to the running back that he was before the injury. So with Cam Akers, I'm not saying he's not coming back next year. Of course he's coming back. But he's not a running back you should be taking in the 3rd round. Until we get reports that Cam Akers is fully good to go, unless you see that, I can't touch Akers in the 3rd. Okay, so you get Mark Andrews at the 401, George Kittle at the 311. Okay, so let's see what happens to us here with this next pick. Not going to be saying too much here. The team ahead of us has gone very balanced so far. They've gone Javonte Williams, Cooper Kupp, and George Kittle. Hell yes. Okay, so now we can talk about our strategy a little bit in depth. Now that we can talk about our 2022 draft strategy. Now, if you're going through and you're getting some of these drafts going on Underdog Fantasy, once you get closer to the season and we have a good idea of what the depth charts for these teams are going to look like, we have a good idea who's going to be the running back 2, who's going to be the running back 3, and who's going to be playing in split backfields, Then we can go through and then we can draft wide receivers early and punt on running back, which is something historically I like to do. But until we have that clarity on Underdog Fantasy, if you are getting in these 2022 drafts this early, for the love of God, take your running backs early. Because if you are not taking your running backs early that have those guaranteed workloads, you are going to be hating yourself. And I repeat, hating yourself when we get to the end of the draft. Because as I said, this is a best ball draft. You're not going to have access to the waiver wire. Next year, you can't go through and you can't pick up the Dontrell Hilliard type players. You just have whoever's going to be on your roster, and the best starting lineup at the end of the week that was possible is going to immediately slide in. So if you pick up a bunch of wide receivers later in the draft, like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, that randomly see those spike weeks when you never know they're going to come, it doesn't really matter if you never know when they're going to come because they will hit your starting lineup. So to start off with 4 running backs like this that you know are going to have starting jobs next year and you are certain of it, there could not be a better start at this time of the season. These teams that decided to go wide receiver heavy, I am telling you, like the team that only takes Cam Akers in the first, the team that only takes, DeAndre Swift with their first 4-round picks. We'll see what Lucky does here. We'll see what Baitnier does. But it is going to be difficult, and I repeat, difficult to find running backs. They dry up so quickly. To start off with 4 here, I cannot be more excited. And okay, real quick, I also noticed we had to say this in the live stream yesterday. You see that ticker at the bottom that says deposit $10 and get $25 added to your account on Underdog Fantasy? That promo was the promo they had coming into the season when you use promo code FLOCK. Now it's different. When you use promo code FLOCK, they'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So if you go through and you deposit $50 on Underdog Fantasy, you're not going to get $25 added into your account. You will get $50 added into your account. So please make sure you take advantage of that. You can find the link in the live chat, find it in the description of the video. And yeah, let's go find our next question here. And this one's going to be coming out from Paul, who says, full PPR, we're going to go with the Patriots defense or the Bills defense for rest of season. Here, I think you have to go with the Patriots defense. No, this Patriots defense has looked elite over the past 2 months. The Patriots are sitting at the top of the AFC right now for a reason. Now, yes, Mac Jones has been impressive, but it's not like Mac Jones is the best quarterback in the AFC. To go through and look at what the New England Patriots have done, they limit the Bills to 10 points this week. Now, of course, that game's not even valid to be looking at. We probably can't be taking much away from that game at all. But beforehand, Tennessee Titans, 13 points. The Atlanta Falcons, 0 points. The Browns, 7 points. The Panthers, 6 points. This defense has been on lock. Now, they are going to be playing a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars in the fantasy football playoffs. They'll have the Indianapolis Colts as well for the first round here. And they'll have the Buffalo Bills. We don't love that matchup. In the case of Buffalo, maybe you argue that they actually have a better fantasy football playoff schedule. They go up against the Panthers, the Patriots, and then the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Patriots have a better defense, but I think Buffalo does have a better matchup here. And then our next question is, I have the Bills defense, but can drop to pick up the Patriots. First in the league, 10-3, pick up Khalil Herbert or Dontrell Hilliard for the bench. This is a little bit of a different scenario. Whenever we are going into the fantasy football playoffs, as I've discussed, this is the one time of the year where it's acceptable to roster both defenses. I would go through and I would pick up both defenses and play it by the matchup. I would rather roster both the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills defense at this time of the season rather than go through and have someone like Dontrell Hilliard on my bench, to be completely honest, especially on a 10-3 roster where we know that you're never going to be considering going through and playing Dontrell Hilliard. Now, Mario coming out says, hey, Mason, flex Odell Beckham Jr., Russell Gage, or Brandon Ayuk this week. Thank you, my friend, for coming out to the live stream. I'll say we're going to go Brandon Ayuk. Now, yes, Deebo Samuel looks like he's probably going to play. But, with Deebo Samuel, even if he does play, this is a groin injury, a soft tissue injury. You're not going to be expecting that Deebo Samuel is 100%. I think you go with Brandon Ayuk here, honestly, quite easily. Okay, so you have T. Higgins going at the 507. Okay, so let's switch this over right now. James Robinson at the 508. So this is kind of why we took running backs early. Look at these wide receivers we have access to. We can take Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown. We can get an elite level quarterback like Josh Allen. We can get an elite level wide receiver like Amari Cooper. We have just so much flexibility. And one other thing on Underdog Fantasy, you have to think through this, right? So we're not going to have access to the waiver wire. You can't stream quarterbacks. So you always have to draft either 2 or 3 quarterbacks on Underdog Fantasy. And you can easily go through and draft 3 quarterbacks at once near the end of the season. But that's when you know the guaranteed starting quarterbacks. Here, we don't know if guys like Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston are going to be guaranteed starting jobs. So instead, I'm going to be willing to go and pay a little bit of a higher price at the quarterback position to get guys that I know had that elite level ceiling. So instead, we're going to go through and get Josh Allen at the 5-10 here. That way we only have to draft 2 quarterbacks. So yeah, we're going to go 5 rounds through without drafting a single wide receiver. If you were looking at our drafts going into this last season, you're probably going, Mason, this is the exact opposite of what you usually do. Usually you grab that elite level running back at the top, then go receiver, 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 receiver afterwards. This time of the season, it's a little bit different with the uncertainty. I'd rather gamble that I can find wide receiver value later on in the draft than try to identify 3 guys that I can know are going to start at the quarterback position. That's why I'm going to be a little bit more willing to grab one of these elite starting quarterbacks early, especially when you see another team here grab 2 of them in or just seemingly take another one off the board for a different team that could have them. Maybe it slides all the quarterbacks up the board here a little bit. Now, Buddha coming out says, Najee Harris cost me my 6x pick'em by half a yard. Gotta love Underdog Fantasy. It's blessed. No, thank you, my friend, of course, for coming out to the live stream. And I'll say, oh my gosh, with Underdog Fantasy, I lost so much money on the pick'ems last week. Like, it's going to be brutal to make that pick'em video this week. I lost a lot of money on those pick'ems last week. And now let's go through. Let's find our next player. Okay, so you have some wide receivers going off here. Interesting. We're definitely going wide receiver. It's essentially, do we want Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, Devonta Smith? I don't think really any of these other wide receivers are in this range. Yeah, I'm going to take Tyler Lockett. Now with Lockett, he's a little bit more volatile than these other wide receiver options. But keep in mind, that's almost an asset here on Underdog Fantasy. When you don't have to submit your starting lineup each and every week and the highest starting lineup gets submitted for you, to have that player that has that volatility but can give you those elite spike weeks, I'm going to be happy to have someone like Tyler Lockett here in the 6th round. Now, John coming out says, full PPR, wide receiver, we're going to go Russell Gage or Julio Jones. Running back, we're going to go A.J. Dillon or Tony Pollard. I'll go A.J. Dillon, knowing that Tony Pollard isn't fully healthy here. And then also between Russell Gage and Julio Jones, this is a little bit of a closer call. Obviously, Julio Jones has a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you also like the fact that you don't have A.J. Brown playing. I would be fine to go Julio Jones, but you have to understand that he has a very low ceiling. But the reason I'm saying Julio versus Russell Gage is I think we can make the argument that both players here have extremely low ceilings, yet the difference is I think Julio Jones has, not low ceilings, low floors, yet I think the difference is Julio Jones has access to the elite level ceiling. So the exact opposite of what I previously said. Okay, really quick, if you have not dropped a like on the live stream yet, please make sure you go down there and drop that like. Let's get this live stream over 100 likes right now. It helps out the channel so much. And also, please, if you're watching this right now in the live chat, or if you're watching this as a video later on, please let me know your opinion. Let me know if you enjoy watching these drafts. The reason I'm doing these drafts is A, it's a lot more fun for me than to just go through and answer questions. And B, because, I've been told that people really enjoy watching these. So if y'all don't like watching these and y'all would rather see me just answer questions, please, you have to let me know that. Carson says Mason should stream poker. Poker, y'all have no idea how much I love poker. The issue is I'm not good enough to stream it. Like, trust me, if I could be a professional poker player, that would be my dream. The issue is I'm too stupid to be so. All right, now Joel coming out says, Star 2, Devonta Freeman, Elijah Mitchell, Jarvis Landry, Russell Gage in a full PPR format. Okay, so obviously the issue is we don't know if Elijah Mitchell is going to be good to play. I think you have to assume that if Elijah Mitchell and Devonta Freeman are both active this week, that they're easily going to be the calls. With Devonta Freeman, just the workload's been fantastic in Baltimore. I made the mistake telling a lot of people to go through and bench him this past week. And then if you have Elijah Mitchell not playing this game, I think the pivot over is actually going to be to Russell Gage over Jarvis Landry. I know Jarvis Landry was effective the last time we went through and played the Baltimore Ravens. I'm just not going to be a believer. And so I would go through and instead I would play Russell Gage just because, with Jarvis Landry, I'm avoiding every single player we can in that Cleveland Browns passing offense. Okay, so now, it looks like a lot of people are enjoying the drafts right now. Okay, so perfect. And also, if y'all are enjoying these drafts, as I said, and I know y'all are annoyed with me saying this, but I genuinely mean this. I want to hammer this in. Nothing supports this channel more. And I repeat, nothing supports this channel more than y'all going and signing up for Underdog Fantasy and using promo code FLOCK. Go make that $10 deposit, get $10 added into your account, go hop in some drafts with us, have some fun on live streams. Let's recap some of these drafts really quick. I believe we were all caught up on donation questions. Let me go through and show off the entire draft board, see if there are any teams that look unique. So Jan here decided to do a very similar thing to what we did. He went running back early as well. He got Najee Harris in the first, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Dillon, and Kareem Hunt. His 2 wide receivers are Jamar Chase and Chase Claypool. I would say I'm going to prefer Josh Jacobs over A.J. Dillon, especially if that Kenyon Drake injury lingers in the next year. Aaron Jones does have guaranteed money on his contract. Now, Miles Sanders is a very interesting case in the middle of the 7th round. Miles Sanders does still have that rookie contract attached to him going into next season as well. I actually really like that value on Miles Sanders in the 7th. I think even though Cordell Patterson was a much better option this season, like if you're telling me, Mason, who do you want for 2022, Miles Sanders or Cordell Patterson? Right now, unless we knew the situation was certain for Cordell Patterson, I'm going to be going with Miles Sanders. So I really like that pick. You got Darrell Henderson going at the 707. Obviously, you will have Cam Akers back next season. Okay, so let's go through. Let's prepare for our next selection. Okay, so yeah, see, this is the main reason that we decided to draft those running backs early, because these wide receivers, Darnell Mooney, Kadarius Toney, these are guys that you know are going to have roles on their respective offenses next year. You don't know what Gus Edwards is going to look like. Like, you don't know what the role is going to be like in Baltimore. So to go through and take these shots in these wide receivers, especially if we can just load up on a ton of them and have their random spike weeks hitting our starting lineup, I'm actually going to really like that idea. Now, Brandon Cooks was drafted back in 2014, which of course was forever ago, but he was only 20 years old when he got drafted, so he's actually still surprisingly young. I'm going to go through and I'm going to take Darnell Mooney with this selection. Y'all know I've never been a massive fan of Darnell Mooney. I think we were wrong for doing so. He's looked very impressive so far this season. And at the same time with Darnell Mooney, this is a wide receiver that, you aren't going to have Allen Robinson in Chicago next year, and this offense can't be any worse than it currently is. So we're going to take Darnell Mooney at the 7-10. He will be going into his 3rd season. Nathan says, peak my team, Mason. Okay, so let's go through and let's check out Nathan's team really quick. Okay, so he's going to be at the 101. So he went Taylor in the 1st. At running back, he also has Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne. I like the value on both of these running backs here. I actually think that Josh Jacobs was probably the best value at the running back position in this draft. And then a wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Brown, Jerry Jeudy, and Brandon Ayuk. What's interesting is, would you rather have Ezekiel Elliott and Adam Thielen or A.J. Brown and Travis Etienne? I am unsure of that. Maybe I would have preferred Zeke and Adam Thielen, but I think that's honestly maybe up to you. I like that draft overall. Okay, so now let's get our next pick up here. So we are going to be on the clock again, most likely looking wide receiver. I am not going to be drafting someone like Courtland Sutton. I wouldn't be caught dead drafting Courtland Sutton, to be completely honest. Probably going to go way down the draft board here. I know most people are not going to agree with this. It is what it is. He is going to be a free agent this offseason. I think he has shown us so far in his NFL career that he has an immense amount of talent. In his 2nd season of his NFL career, he actually had more targets per game and receiving yards per game than Amari Cooper. And I know y'all have heard me say that so many times before, but it kind of shows the talent that he is. Knowing that he'll be a free agent this upcoming season, I'm going to be taking Michael Gallup, another one of these players that will have those high ceiling weeks on a week-to-week basis and also those very low floor weeks. So we're just taking as many shots on those wide receivers as we can. Okay, so now our next question coming out from Jay and says, I wanted Carter, but you had to go on a rant about drafting running backs early in the middle teams. One took Carter the round where I was going to target him. Yeah, I think that Jacobs was the pick there, my friend. I honestly think that with Josh Jacobs, he may be just severely undervalued right now with his job security in dynasty fantasy football, as well as in these 2022 underdog drafts. Because with Josh Jacobs, he was selected in the 1st round in 2019. I don't think his 5th-year option helps him that much this upcoming season, of course. But still, the team is very much invested into the running back position already. They gave $11 million guaranteed to Kenyon Drake this last offseason. So it's not like they're in a position where they can go through and draft another running back with significant draft capital this offseason. They can't go through and pay another running back a considerable amount of money. So they're kind of stuck with what they currently have in Las Vegas. Okay, so now our next question coming up from Eric says, pick 2 running backs in a flex: James Robinson, Darrell Henderson, Saquon Barkley, and Elijah Moore. Okay, so the issue with Darrell Henderson is with this game being Monday night, we're not going to really have the clarity going into the week, as well as we just don't necessarily know what we are going to be getting with the role from Sony Michel. So I'm not going to be going Darrell Henderson. With Saquon Barkley, of course, with Saquon Barkley, he looks horrendous, and you have to be drastically lowering your expectations for Saquon Barkley. But with that being said, it's a really good matchup this week in particular, going up against a soft Los Angeles Chargers defense. I'm going to be going with Saquon Barkley. I know a lot of people are probably going to hate that. Obviously, it's a horrendous offense, and Barkley isn't necessarily looking like he is that 85% snap rate player that he once was right now in New York, which of course is frustrating, but nonetheless, I think you want to go with him. And then also between James Robinson and Elijah Moore, we're going to be going with James Robinson over Elijah Moore. Obviously, Elijah Moore looks better now that you have no Corey Davis in this offense, and Elijah Moore is an elite level talent. Everybody who was following our Dynasty Fantasy Football channel this offseason knows exactly how much I love Elijah Moore, but I'm going to be going with the running back that we believe that can get 15 plus touches in his own backfield. Okay, so Christian coming out says Underdog Fantasy is just over-unders. Correct, guys? No, Underdog Fantasy is over-unders, but they also have weekly drafts you can get in. Like, they have NFL playoff drafts you can go hop in. They have these 2022 fantasy football drafts you can hop in. I mean, I did over 200 fantasy drafts on Underdog Fantasy coming into this season, just for 2021 best ball leagues alone. So I can guarantee you, we're probably going to be doing more than 200 this offseason on Underdog Fantasy. So, I mean, if you want to hop into a draft, if you already signed up to Underdog Fantasy to do the player props, literally, all you do is click a different tab and you can go over there and you can get into some of those drafts. Like right now, like, look, we are on the drafts, and let me go through and copy and paste this link so I don't ruin this page. But yeah, let's go through and make a duplicate page with this. Okay, so yeah, here's that draft board, and we're going to go to pick them real quick. Yeah, so let's switch them over. Like, this is Pick'em. This is what y'all are used to seeing on Underdog Fantasy if y'all been making those over-under bets. And just pivoting right over, this is the same exact site, the same exact app. And if you want to get into a draft with us, I mean, you already use a promo code FLOCK. You've already done everything, so you're in the right place. Now you have A-Rob, Juju, Trey Lance going at the 903 to JN. Obviously, you will never see Trey Lance going this high in another draft. If you don't know about us, we just love Trey Lance here in the flock, knowing that this is a quarterback that has that elite rushing upside. Gronk goes to the 905. Okay, so John says Javonte Williams, Cordell Patterson, Saquon Barkley, pick 2. We're going to be going with the combination of Saquon Barkley and Cordell Patterson if Melvin Gordon plays. I know everybody is off Barkley, which, I mean, y'all have a good reason to be off Saquon Barkley. I mean, so we drastically lowered Saquon Barkley in our rest of season rankings. I mean, he definitely doesn't look like the player that he once was. I think you still have to go through, and I still think you have to take him in this range. Okay, so recapping our team so far. At running back, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins, David Montgomery. Easily the strong suit of this roster. We have the elite level quarterback with Josh Allen. At wide receiver, Tyler Lockett, Darnell Mooney, and Michael Gallup. Okay, so let's see. I have my eyes on one player in particular here. I guess I'd actually be kind of fine with 2 guys, but really want one of them. Okay, so Mike says cash out on Christian McCaffrey in Dynasty this offseason on a contending roster. I'd be fine cashing out on Christian McCaffrey from a redraft standpoint in 2022. I'm going to be valuing him very highly, but in Dynasty Fantasy Football, I think at this point you still want to be selling those running backs when they're on their second contract. So I would be fine cashing out. Okay, so we get our guy. We're going to be going with Rashad Bateman as our wide receiver 4, who should be, the wide receiver 2 in Baltimore this next year. Okay, so So Kristen says, gotcha. I signed up last night with code FLOCK, but I haven't put $100 in yet because I'm just trying to get used to everything. Also, adding to that, didn't you say using the name gives me $10 right away? No. So what happens when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK? You don't get $10 added into your account right away. Whatever you deposit, they match. So if you go through and say, if you deposit $10, they'll add $10 to the account. If you go through and you deposit $25, they'll add $25 to the account. And you can do that all the way up to $100 because obviously they're not going to add $1,000 to your account by any means. So yeah, you can just go through and get whatever you deposit match up to $100. You don't have to deposit $100. You can deposit $10 if you want. Okay, so now Jenna says Brandon Ayuk probably. No, Brandon Ayuk went a long time ago. RG said, it's the first year I followed all your advice, trades buy low, sell high, and never doing it again to it, bro. RG, that's probably a good call, my friend. That's probably a very good call. And our next question going to be coming out from, I believe we're all caught up with the recent questions here. Okay, so Dawson Knox at the 912, Kendrick Bourne at the 1001. Okay, so Melvin Gordon goes, okay, perfect. So we get another wide receiver here. Here we're going to be going with Tyler Boyd. With Tyler Boyd, you should have a very safe role in Cincinnati, and just playing every single snap in a best ball format is going to be very important at the wide receiver position. It would be between Tyler Boyd and Van Jefferson for me. Actually, you know what? It would be nice getting a quarterback that has that guaranteed job security with Joe Burrow right now. You know what? We may actually go Joe Burrow over Tyler Boyd. Because, yeah, the quarterbacks that are going to be coming back to us are going to be very bad. I think we can still find some wide receivers. So, yeah, good thing we kind of changed our mind at the end right there, because Joe Burrow was definitely the right call to get Burrow in the 10th. Okay, Saran says, who else had Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson tonight? Obviously, Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson giving you a fine game. I mean, with Dalvin Cook, 27 carries. I didn't know he went over 200. 200 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Dear God. Justin Jefferson, 7 receptions, pretty much 80 receiving yards in the receiving touchdown. I didn't see that Dalvin officially got to 200 rushing yards, though. Near the end of the game, we were watching it. I essentially always watch it on mute because the commentators just make me mad. Okay, so let's go through. And NBA Sean says, hey, Mason, would you try to trade Dalvin Cook this offseason in Dynasty? I have Jonathan Taylor. Yes, I think I would have traded Dalvin Cook last offseason. Like, going into the season, I had someone like Najee Harris ranked ahead of Dalvin Cook. If you don't know my strategy with Dynasty Fantasy Football, I've been covering Dynasty Fantasy Football on YouTube longer than pretty much anybody else. I've been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football out of everybody covering it on YouTube, definitely longer than anybody else except the people at DLF. But with Dynasty, I mean, those running backs, when they're on their second deals, guys like Dalvin Cook, players like Alvin Kamara, I'm always going to be the first person to cash in on them. Okay, so now Williams says, in a 6-point passing touchdown for a quarterback in Superflex, would you take Lamar Jackson or Justin Jefferson? I mean, with a 6-point passing touchdown, I know that this probably doesn't resonate with a lot of people. If it's a 6-point per passing touchdown league, I'm going to value Lamar Jackson less. I'm going to be less likely to go through and draft Lamar Jackson. Because what makes Lamar Jackson elite in fantasy isn't necessarily what he gives you as a passer. Instead, what makes Lamar Jackson elite in fantasy is the rushing upside that he has, and those pocket passing options are going to have a very hard time catching up on him. So I would rather have Lamar Jackson in a 4-point passing touchdown format, and I'd rather have someone like Matthew Stafford at a discount in a 6-point passing touchdown league, knowing that Matthew Stafford can easily make up the gap with the fantasy points scored with his passing volume, which really isn't possible for him to do in a 4-point passing touchdown format. Now, of course, if it's super flex, that changes more things than a 6-point passing touchdown league. Nonetheless, we actually went through and we took Lamar Jackson in the first round in the Dynasty mock draft that we did yesterday. And yes, we took him ahead of Justin Jefferson. Okay, so Mike says, my Steelers defense MVP for opposing running backs. Yeah, I saw that with the stat that they showed going into the half. It was like Mike Tomlin had over 100 games with not allowing a single running back to have 100 rushing yards going into half. And over the past 3 games, he allowed 2. Now, our next question going to be coming out from Blake says, how do I join your next draft? I've already been placing bets for a week or so now. I used the code FLOCK to sign up. All you have to do is be subscribed to the channel. And if you have that bell hit, I mean, when we start this live stream, I just send the link to this. This is a private draft with only people out in the live stream. I send that link out in the live chat. So if you're one of the first people in the live chat, you get it right away. Randall coming out with our next question. Randall, I hope that you got that Fantasy Flock Network hat we sent you a couple weeks ago. Now, pick 2, Javonte Williams, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Chuba Hubbard, and DK Metcalf. Okay, I think you have to. I know so many people are going to hate me for saying this, but I feel like a crazy person. I think you have to play Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. I think you have to. Yeah, I mean, we are going through and we are lowering our expectations with both running backs. But, I mean, if you're looking at Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, you know the workloads they're going to get. We've seen the ceiling before. Now, yes, it sucks that Barkley just is playing in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Yes, it sucks that he's not seeing every single snap. Yes, it sucks that Ezekiel Elliott's dealing with a knee injury. But at the same time, Tony Pollard's not 100% healthy himself. So I actually probably would play Zeke and Barkley, except if Melvin Gordon's out. If Melvin Gordon's out, of course, you play Javonte Williams. Okay, so now Corey Davis, Jamal Agnew. Okay, so let's see. Surprised to see Kirk Cousins still available. Yeah, to take someone like Khalil Herbert or Chuba Hubbard at this range, like this is why we took our running backs early. You had Kirk Cousins going. Okay, so I think we're going to go way off the board here. I know we're going way off the board here. You know what? We're not going to have to because we pick right away. So let's just take Tim Patrick. It is what it is. I'm not a big fan of Tim Patrick. We want to go a wide receiver. But you know what? I'm so freaking dumb. We needed a tight end. The last draft, we took Darren Waller. This one, we had not. We should have gone back-to-back tight ends here. That is very bad by myself. That is very, very bad. Okay, so now Randall says, I was thinking Saquon and Zeke too since Melvin is back. Got the hat as well. Appreciate, brother. No, thank you so much for supporting the channel, my friend. Happy to hear that you got the hat. Now, Saran comes out, says, Vikings were an embarrassment, though they almost sold. Yeah, that is embarrassing if you are a Minnesota Vikings fan. I mean, for the Vikings to go out there and do that, that is definitely embarrassing. And now Nighthawk says, help, I have a first-round bye, so this week doesn't matter. Pat's defense got dropped. Do I drop my backup quarterback and just not start one this week so I can stash the Pat's defense? If you already have the first-round bye locked up, then hell yeah. I mean, who the hell cares if you go through and you don't start a quarterback this week? Go through and pick up the New England Patriots defense. Okay, so George says, currently crushing it in one of the flocked $50 leagues. My hot take for the next year is that Javonte Williams will finish as a top 5 running back and J.K. Dobbins will be top 12. Okay, Dobbins, I don't think that's a hot take. I think Dobbins, is going to probably be drafted near the running back 12, 13 going into next year. I mean, I took him at the I took him at the end of the third here. I just think that was a massive value on him. Okay, so I'm pissed to see that you have Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki going to Raw in this draft. He's taking 4 tight ends. Raw is straight up punting in this league. He has taken 0 quarterbacks and 4 tight ends. He is punting here. I do not know what he is doing. Maybe he is out to get us since we have not taken a tight end yet. And he's trying to make us pay for it. I think that is a punt, though. And we're probably going to take a running back here, to be honest. Yeah, we're going to take a running back because after this range, there's nobody else I know that is going to have a guaranteed job. Nyheim Hines has guaranteed money this next season. And with Nyheim Hines, he's a player that in a regular fantasy football league, I never want, because if Jonathan Taylor goes down, it's not like you can go through and know exactly when Nyheim Hines is going to produce. But when Nyheim Hines, he goes through and he has those random spike volatile weeks because he's that satellite running back. So he's a little bit more valuable in a best ball format, and just being able to block some of the other teams that may be a little desperate here at the running back position. That's going to help us out. We're probably going to be done drafting running backs. We're probably just going to take a bunch of swings with wide receivers a little later on here. Duncan said, bro, I used to be second in my league and I've fallen all the way to 5 and 7 out of the playoffs. It's embarrassing. I'm already preparing for 2022. I am so sorry to hear that, my friend. I am sorry to hear that. And of course, if you are in the chat right now and you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all have. And Robert Tunyon at the 1204. And don't feel like you need to donate at all for me to answer your question. Just throw it in the general chat right now. Okay, so here is something I want to point out. Like, let me point out what I believe to be some obvious mistakes here. Let me double check to make sure I'm not wrong and just completely embarrass myself. But off the top of my head, I would say that to take... Sorry, I can't spell. To take J.D. McKissic ahead of Nyheim Hines, I am not a big fan of that at all. And the reason for it, and let me take that back. I don't want to say I'm not a big fan of it. I want to say it's a horrible mistake. And the reason for that is they are very, very similar running backs. But the difference between the two players is Nyheim Hines is under contract next year. J.D. McKissic is not. J.D. McKissic does not have a contract in Washington. J.D. McKissic is going to be 29 years old this offseason. So yeah, I don't want to be drafting J.D. McKissic over Nyheim Hines. I think that's a pretty big mistake. Nyheim Hines has guaranteed money for 2022. Ben says, what do I do with Nick Chubb this weekend? You have to start Nick Chubb. I mean, it sucks because obviously it's a horrible matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens. And with Nick Chubb, last time we saw him go up against the Baltimore Ravens, a very good run defense, he was extremely disappointing. I mean, everybody kind of knows that here. And also, you're going to have, Kareem Hunt eating into his workload. So I'm not going to be excited about Chubb in the slightest, but you just know that this is a running back that is one of the best running backs in the NFL from a talent perspective. And to go along with this, he's running behind an elite level offensive line. So you have to go through and you have to start Nick Chubb, even though you're not that excited about it. Okay, so now let's go through and find a question in the chat to answer. Marco says, when A.J. Brown comes back, would you start him over Saquon Barkley? Hell yes. Hell yes. And now our next question coming out from C-Mac, who says, Amari or risk Darrell Henderson and play Sony if he misses? That's interesting because I would say if you know that you're going to have the starting running back for the Los Angeles Rams seeing 80% of the snaps here, I would go through and I'd play that running back. My worry is that Darrell Henderson is active and then they split that backfield like 60-40 between Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel. And in that outcome, I'd prefer Amari Cooper. However, if you think that you have a good sense on the situation, and if Darrell Henderson's going to be active, they'll play him 75% more of snaps and get that many touches as well, then you can go through and plan on playing Darrell Henderson. But to be completely honest, I mean, if you have both Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel, you're hoping Darrell Henderson misses, so you can just go through and play Sony Michel instead. Because then, I'm not saying Sony Michel's the better running back, but I'm saying if there's no Darrell Henderson in that game, you know only one running back is getting touches out of that backfield. Now, Luke coming out says, pick one running back and one flex to play this weekend. Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette, Jamar Chase, Elijah Moore, and DK Metcalf. Okay, so the running back is going to be easy. You play Leonard Fournette. Yes, it's a tough matchup going up against the Buffalo Bills, but with Leonard Fournette, he is seeing every single snap, every single touch out of that backfield. You go Leonard Fournette. And for the flex, it's going to come down between Nick Chubb and Jamar Chase. If it's a full point PPR format, I would be going with Jamar Chase. If it's a non-PPR, I would be going with Nick Chubb. Okay, so now our next question coming out from Bobby says, first year playing fantasy, lucked into 11-2, listening to your advice. Should I be worried about Leonard Fournette's playoff schedule? Of course, thank you so much for coming out, supporting the channel, my friend. Let me answer that question in 1 second after I prepare my next two selections. And we are getting to the point of the draft where it is disgusting. We have to be checking contracts here to figure out who's going to even be playing on teams next season. Yeah, see, you have Jordan Love going at the 1308. Yeah, thank God we took. Okay, so Marvin Jones goes, okay, so we have the easiest pick in the world here. We're going to go with Amara St. Brown. I almost took Amara St. Brown 2 rounds ago. Like, whenever we were talking about going way off the draft board, that's the wide receiver I was thinking about getting. Okay, so let's go. We know he's going to have a role with Detroit next year. I mean, he was a rookie this year. He's shown flashes. Going to be completely fine going with Amara St. Brown. Now, to find our next player, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher conversation. You know what? It will not be. I think we have a clear call. Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the 1401. Yeah, so these wide receivers, McCole Hardman's operating as the wide receiver 4 right now in Kansas City. No reason to assume that's going to change going forward. Gabriel Davis, you can almost say the same thing about him in Buffalo. I mean, Gabriel Davis saw his role shrink from 2020 to 2021. I mean, there's nobody that sees that happen and then bounces back the following season. Nobody. It really comes down to, do we expect that Terrace Marshall possibly he was a healthy scratch. Like, does Terrace Marshall get possibly better next year? You know what? We're not going to take the risk. We're just going to go with Zach Ertz. Of course, with Zach Ertz, he is old as hell, but hopefully Arizona gives him a contract this offseason. Hopefully he can stay in Arizona in 2022. And we need a tight end there. Okay, so now we have a question coming out from Alex. Says, okay, so Caden says, take Irv. My friend, I was going through and I was looking to take Irv Smith Jr. I mean, my thought process there was with Irv Smith Jr., I mean, we don't necessarily know what the workload is going to look like when he comes back. Because remember, last training camp in 2021, you had Mike Zimmer coming out and he was saying, Well, Tyler Conklin has very much impressed. Irv Smith Jr. is not going to have a bigger role with the departure of Kyle Rudolph. And I mean, I rolled my eyes to that because I liked the talent profile of Irv Smith Jr. And I thought there was a chance that he took that step forward. But the issue is, maybe now that we see Tyler Conklin this season and we have the Irv Smith Jr. injury opening the door, maybe those reports were correct where Tyler Conklin is going to have a role in this team going forward. So yeah, let's take Zach Ertz. I know we say that Zach Ertz is old. Now, I don't want to make it seem like Zach Ertz is the oldest player out there on the board right now. He is 31, and he's already turned 31, so he's going to be 31 to start next year. So I'm going to be fine with Zach Ertz. You know what? Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Okay, so let's go through. And JN says, Mason picking from my queue. Yeah, JN, I figured you were going to go with Amara St. Brown. I mean, I think my favorite wide receiver picks from this range here, I like the Devontae Parker selection. I like the Amara St. Brown selection, and also probably the Curtis Samuel pick as well. JN, I think Laviska Shenault may be done. I mean, I like Laviska Shenault coming into the season. I think he may be done, especially when you're getting Travis Etienne next year. G. Hall coming out says, a better dynasty value, Terry McLaurin or Calvin Ridley. One thing that, I mean, has turned me off of Terry McLaurin in dynasty fantasy football in particular is when he comes out and when he posts a very good rookie season. I mean, do y'all remember what we were saying 2 years ago with Terry McLaurin? Let me rephrase. I know not many people here at all were here 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, when this was just a dynasty fantasy football channel, whenever we were talking about Terry McLaurin, we were saying, well, yeah, he was a very good rookie. He was one of the better rookies in that 2019 draft class. But he stayed all 5 years at Ohio State. So when you had some players in that 2019 class getting drafted at 20 years old, Terry McLaurin was drafted at 23. He turned 24 his rookie season. Terry McLaurin is older than Juju Smith-Schuster right now. That is correct. Terry McLaurin is older than Juju Smith-Schuster. So McLaurin is going to turn 27 going into next season. So he's not as young as a lot of people want to believe that he is in Dynasty. I know he hasn't been in the NFL that long. That's the reason that we were going through and saying to avoid Terry McLaurin, and not that you were going to see him retire before other players, of course, but because we were saying, well, yes, it was an impressive rookie season. It's not like a usual rookie season. It's not like a rookie season where someone comes out and they dominate at 20 and you're going, oh my God, think about what they'll be at 24. Because he was already there. But nonetheless, Calvin Ridley, I mean, this is a wide receiver that's pretty much the same age. I think that Calvin Ridley has shown us that he is a better talent. I would prefer Calvin Ridley over Terry McLaurin in Dynasty. I think with Calvin Ridley, he's probably going to be back playing football next year, I'd imagine. Now you have KJ Hamler, Nelson Aguilar. JN just comes out here and he craps on us by taking KJ Hamler when we took Tim Patrick earlier in the draft, my friend. I embarrassed myself for making that. I thought KJ Hamler was already off the board. Evan coming out says PPR, Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, David Montgomery play 2. I'm going to be going Jacobs and Elijah Mitchell. If Elijah Mitchell misses, obviously, play Montgomery. This year is with Elijah Mitchell. He has both a concussion and a knee injury right now. Luke coming out says, rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. I didn't want to say anything on this because I don't know if it's official, so I don't want to say anything if it ends up being wrong, because I know Jan sent us something on Twitter about this. Obviously, everybody. Okay, so no, never mind. I just looked it up on Twitter again. It is official. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas, 33 years old. Just incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. Obviously, a very exciting player. You know, Benjamin at the 1508. Okay, so let's go through and let's pull this up. Okay, do you have Carson Wentz down here in this range? That does not seem right. Raheem Mostert at the 1509. Okay, so we're actually probably going to, or do we take Josh Palmer here? No, I think we take the wide receiver we took in yesterday's draft as well. We're going to continue to take wide receivers and just take as many shots as we can for players that can potentially see spike weeks. We're going to go with someone that I did not like in that 2020 NFL draft class out of TCU. We're going to be going with Jalen Reagor. Okay. And let me go through and let's recap this draft. It is almost 1 a.m. So I'm probably going to I'm not going to end this draft because we have to finish it out, but I'm probably going to be showing the draft on the live stream just because, these players being drafted at this point aren't even going to be drafted in your leagues. But let me go through and let me recap why we went through with this draft strategy. Actually, we have one more pick before we can recap this. Let me go get another pick. Okay, so let's get this, and we are going to be probably looking, I don't even know what position we're not looking running back. We're done at running back. Like, I wanted to avoid these guys like Latavius Murray and Jeff Wilson because I feel more comfortable finding players like Josh Palmer who we can project to have roles next year. Yeah, you know what? I'm fine saying Josh Palmer's going to have a role in Los Angeles. Let's take him here as our wide receiver 8. Yeah, we crushed this draft. Okay, so let's go through and let me talk about some of our draft strategy at this point. This is going to be a 20-round draft, so we will have 4 more rounds after this. We're going to probably take 2 more tight ends, and we're probably going to throw in another wide receiver as well. So y'all know going closer to the season when we have a greater understanding of running back depth charts and we're going to be a lot more accurate with our predictions, there I'm completely fine taking one elite level running back at the top and then going through and loading up on receiver, and rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, and just loading up on that one position in particular and punting quarterback as well. Now, at this point of the season, if we were drafting these 2022 drafts on Underdog Fantasy, when you don't have access to the waiver wire, you need to be taking your running backs early because once you get to rounds 7, you're going to be taking running backs that, I hate to say this, but we don't know if they're going to have roles. Cordell Patterson going in the 5th, a lot is going to change. Remember, the NFL draft has not happened yet. You're going to have running backs like Isaiah Spiller, like Breece Hall, like Kenneth Walker coming in and taking jobs. You're going to have running backs in free agency changing teams. So a lot of these running backs, guys like Miles Sanders, Darrell Henderson, Gus Edwards, Damien Harris, you don't know if they're going to have roles. Whereas the wide receivers going in these rounds with Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool, Michael Thomas, Darnell Mooney, you can be pretty confident that they're going to have roles on their own teams. So that's why we're taking our running backs early now, because I can guarantee you Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins, and David Montgomery will all be starting running backs next year. And we can say that right now at the beginning of this season. And also, as we were saying, with drafting quarterbacks near the end of the draft, it's going to be very similar where guys like Matt Ryan, you don't know if they're going to be guaranteed that starting job. And because we don't have access to the waiver wire, you're having to draft multiple of those players. So I was a little bit more willing to draft that elite level quarterback at the top end of this draft and then only have to draft 2. So we get Joe Burrow in the 5th round and we get Josh Allen in the 5th round and Joe Burrow in the 10th. And because this is a best ball format and you don't have to submit your starting lineup, I'm going to be fine going through and hammering these wide receivers in the middle rounds. We're going to be taking Tyler Lockett, Darnell Mooney, Michael Gallup, Rashad Bateman, Tim Patrick, Amara St. Brown, Jalen Reagor, Josh Palmer. And no, if I had to submit a starting lineup with these wide receivers, I wouldn't feel comfortable. But when the best options are going to be automatically started for me at the end of the week, like if you get a random pop-off week from Tim Patrick here where he has 4 receptions, just say 80 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, that's going to slide into my starting lineup at the end of the week. He got the production and we didn't have to predict it. So I'm going to be fine taking as many shots on those wide receivers as I can, knowing that we're going to be beating the rest of the league at quarterback and running back. At tight end, I think maybe we made a mistake waiting this long. We only have Zach Ertz here. We're going to have to take 2 more tight ends, see if we can just cycle through and try to find spike weeks a little later on. But I think at this point, you're not really looking for an elite level ceiling. Y'all know what we talk about all the time in fantasy football is getting that elite level ceiling, and not necessarily worrying about the floor of these players. Now, at this point, you have to worry about the floor because I think that there are going to be a lot of players in this range. Especially look at these running backs. Mike Davis not going to have a starting job. Tony Jones will be a name you never hear about again. Darrell Williams will be a name you never hear about again. James White will be a name you never hear about again. I think a lot of these running backs you'll never hear about. That's why I would rather be taking shots at these wide receivers a little later on. But of course, we're going to end the live stream here. I know we have some other questions in the chat asking if we are going to be getting another draft going after this one. I am sorry, we are not. It's about 1 a.m. I don't want to be staying up till 2 a.m. tonight. Like I said, we are going to be getting these drafts going almost every single night. So go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the description of the video, and you can find the link in the live chat as well. And when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they'll match that deposit for you dollar for dollar up to $100. So please take advantage of that. And yeah, that's all I got for you. I really hope you have a great day, and I really hope that we see